How do we incubate good ideas to be more sustainable? Hi, my name is Rasu Jalani. I am a social sculptor, community organizer, father, lover, friend, champion of everything creative, and currently the director of recruiting and community engagement at New Museums Incubator, New Inc. We're now moving into emerging technology and new media, emerging media. And, although I've been doing technology for a long time, new media, emerging media is a new thing for me. So the first time I actually engaged in VR was about 2.5, 3 years ago. Actually, exactly 2.5 years ago when I came into New Inc. New Inc was the first time that I experienced VR that wasn't a commercial or wasn't some wonky video game. Like it was actual like a narrative, and it was Winslow and Malika's Giant. And it's been great to see them evolve with Giant into Tree, which Tree became this like haptic involved metaphor around deforestation and climate change, which is one of my favorite pieces. So New Inc is an incubator that operates out of the New Museum as a program. It's 5 years in, so we have our fifth cohort, and we are looking at the intersection of art, technology, and design overlaid with social entrepreneurship or just creative entrepreneurship, quite frankly. So we have a robust mentorship program. We have what we call a professional development program to give people the kind of nuts and bolts and basic frameworks of how to run a business. So most art schools, design schools, and tech schools don't show their students how to actually apply the technology as a business, more as a specialist or a technician. So we give our community members the basic frameworks of how to start and run a business. And projects come in with, some basic business acumen, but we try to add on to that. Outside of that, we kind of have a full spectrum of what success is. So we don't find the success for people. People tell us what their goals are, and we try to hold them accountable to those goals. So it's a 1-year program. It is a membership, and it's a tremendous community, diverse community of women, people of color, creatives in different disciplines. So it's the true form of diversity. So what is an incubator? Incubators go way back into the medical field, and we can look at academic institutions as incubators of thought and theory and knowledge. And, Silicon Valley kind of co-opted the incubator kind of terminology, and that people would have an idea, they incubate the idea and get it to a point where it's accelerated and gets funding and becomes like the next Facebook, Uber, Twitter, whomever. But that's a unicorn model. We understand that less than 2% are even successful with that model, but tons and tons of finances is pumped into this industry. What New Inc. specifically seeks to do was to be a bit of an antithesis of that, is how do we incubate good ideas to be more sustainable? So we look at past 2008, which was this tremendous crash in the American economy. We saw the loss of the mom and pop shops. So what does sustainability look like? What does a sustainable business practice look like? Having a $200,000 business is okay. Not every business has to be worth $200 million, $2 billion. So we really wanted to kind of look at that as a precedent, but also what does it look like to have cultural social impact? So every project to some degree has a cultural social impact at New Inc. So the incubator brings in an idea whether it's green or somewhat fully formed, and we put resources, mentoring, and advising around the project for it to flourish, blossom, and then go back in the marketplace. Our business model is not only based off of membership, that's the economic business model, but the business model is predicated on incubate and get back out. So we're not really in the retention business. Our business is to get people all the resources they need and get to the marketplace and be able to seed it. I think one thing that all creative practitioners, all creators need to really think about is how to sustain themselves without being dependent on the same institutions that may block them from engaging, right? So when we are building content, when we're building projects, is to think about, okay, what's phase one, what's phase two, and what is the ultimate phase? Phase one may just be play. Let's just see if this thing works. Phase two may be, okay, who's interested in platforming it? Phase three may be, how do I actually make money off of this thing? And I think these are the questions that we ask at New Inc. Is that beyond just creating a thing, how are you sustaining yourself? Because the starving artist kind of stereotype is played out. And I think at this point, we need artists who are not just engaging in the economy, but are pushing the culture forward, and it's not being co-opted by corporations and institutions, that the creative practitioner has a bit of authenticity and also self-reliance in the way that they create work, get some business skills, figure out how to incorporate yourself, think about intellectual property, think about negotiation skills. With immersive technology, immersive media, there's a high entry point. It's expensive. And takes a while to produce, and you have to have the right technology. So the more people that we can get in the space that allows for different pathways to create content makes it easier. But I'm really, really concerned about it. The narratives and the people who are creating content have the right resources to create that content, to play the game as well. The other aspect is worrying about technology for technology's sake. It's always an issue. Technology for technology's sake, art for art's sake, why you need to be in VR. Adora Udoji talks about this a lot. Jake Sally from Riot talks about this a lot. Why does your story need to be on VR? Not just using it, but why VR specifically? And oftentimes I'll run into people using VR for no reason at all. They're just in it. And that's okay. It's okay to play. But when you're starting to really develop content and start to make an economy out of the content, it becomes very worrisome. I think projects that really, really move me and inspire me are projects that are not just one-offs, or projects that create kind of a self-narrative, or projects that really talk about a community and can build community out of it. I think about a project that Elisa Moorhead is working with in Baltimore, where she's transforming the narratives about Baltimore, where they're being gentrified and you have board up houses, and using AR kits to kind of look at what was once there. What does that look like when we go to cities that start to disappear? I quite frankly believe that AR is the way of the future. I think VR is the testing grounds for AR, because AR doesn't disrupt your sight. Me walking around with goggles all day to kind of go into a different world, I think about how that affects the psyche of someone. What cognitive disruption does that have? But AR allows us to see what's there and what's not there at the same time. That's very interesting to me. So what does that look like when we're turning pages of a book and the book is coming alive? Shout out to Movers and Shakers. Shout out to Tony Patrick, who's also developing something very similar. What does it look like to reimagine libraries and spaces? So AR would allow us to do things like that. I'm more particularly interested in subculture. What generates when there's no resources or people have to create for themselves? How do we get those to the surface and highlight them? New York City is the home of punk rock. New York City is the home of hip hop, street art, graffiti. All of this was born out of subculture, oppression. I'm not asking for oppression. I'm asking for the stories that manifest out of it. I'm an Afrofuturist. So I have to pay attention to the past and know lessons and the patterns from the past, be present with it, and design the future. So with that, I'm looking at how technology can help us accelerate the time warp to get into the future faster.